Hello students, today we are going to be looking at the poem Daffodils by William Wordsworth. I hope you have your book ready in front of you, your treasure trove, along with a register where you can write your notes or keywords. Alright, to understand this poem better, let me introduce you to the poet. Now, the poet William Wordsworth was a nature lover. If we go to page 25 of your book, a little bit about the poet is written there. It says, "No study of English literature is complete without a reading of William Wordsworth, who is perhaps the greatest of the romantic poets." Now, romantic poets, not necessarily to do with romance, it means a poet who writes on sentiments, emotions, and imagination. It was he who rallied for the use of everyday language, common people and things in poetry. So he used simple language so as to reach maximum people, so as many people would be able to enjoy his creative work. Wordsworth was a great lover of nature, and this poem was inspired by a real life experience. Let me tell you here that he had recently, when he wrote this poem, before this he had lost his brother whose name was John. And then he wrote this poem Daffodils. It is a well-known fact that William Wordsworth was influenced and inspired by nature. To understand this poem, let us begin a stanza-wise, line-by-line explanation. I am on page 26 of your book, and I am going to begin the first stanza. "I wandered lonely as a cloud." Here the poet is talking about himself. He wandered. Wandered means moving around aimlessly. Lonely as a cloud. See, he's trying to tell you here how lonely he was, without any company. Like a cloud, floating. Without aimlessly he is roaming around. "I wandered lonely as a cloud that floats on high over vales and hills." Like a cloud that floats high over the valleys and hills. "When all at once I saw a crowd, a host of golden daffodils." When suddenly he saw a crowd in huge numbers. What did he see? A host of golden daffodils. A huge collection of golden daffodils. Daffodils are flowers. Golden here means yellow colored daffodils. Daffodils are beautiful flowers, and that is what he saw suddenly, and that too in huge numbers. Beside the lake, beneath the trees, fluttering and dancing in the breeze. Where did he see the daffodils? Beside the lake, next to a water body, beneath the trees, under the trees. They were fluttering and dancing in the breeze. So wherever he was, wherever the poet was at that time, it was a beautiful scenery. The entire surrounding was very picturesque, because there was a lake, there were trees, and under the trees were these beautiful golden daffodils, and they were fluttering and dancing in the breeze. So there was a light breeze, and these flowers were moving as if they were dancing happily in the breeze. "Continuous as the stars that shine and twinkle on the Milky Way." Now, the poet here is trying to make a comparison of the daffodils with the Milky Way. So he says, continuous, unending, never-ending, as the stars that shine and twinkle on the Milky Way. The daffodils were unending, so many, just like the stars that shine and twinkle on the Milky Way. They were countless. They stretched in never-ending line along the margin of a bay. They stretched in an everlasting line, never ending, everlasting, not ending, along the margin of a bay. Now here maybe he's trying to talk about the impact that these daffodils have made on him, which was an everlasting, never ending impact. Because later on, towards the end of the poem, we will understand when we read that even in the future, when he is feeling low or depressed and unhappy, this image of the daffodils that he has seen, when it flashes across his mind, it makes an impact on him, which changes his mood, and he becomes calm and happy. 10,000 saw I at a glance, tossing their heads in sprightly dance. So here again he talks about the huge numbers. 10,000 saw I at a glance. It is understood that he may not have been able to count the exact number of the flowers, but according to him it was about 10,000. He says, I saw at a glance. In one look I saw 10,000 tossing their heads in a sprightly dance. They were full of spirit and vitality. They looked very happy. The waves beside them danced. We are on stanza 3. The waves beside them danced, but they outdid the sparkling waves in glee. The water body had, there was water in it. They're talking about a lake next to the place where the daffodils are growing. So the waves beside them danced. The waves in the water body also moved as if they were dancing. But they, the daffodils, outdid the sparkling waves in glee. Outdid. They oversmarted, or they overtook, or they outshone the sparkling waves in glee, in happiness. They were better than the waves. A poet could not but be gay. A poet could not help but be happy in such a jocund company. Jocund means jovial, happy, bright. I gazed and gazed, but little thought what wealth the show to me had brought. He said, I kept on looking and looking at this beauty that was there right in front of me, and was wondering at the benefit that this view was bringing to me. What wealth the show to me had brought, the benefit, because we will understand that it had far-reaching impact on the poet, not only for that moment when he was watching this view, but even later on in future when he was sad and depressed, he would think of this view that he had seen of the daffodils, and this would bring him some solace, comfort and happiness. Now the last stanza. For oft when on my couch I lie, in vacant or in pensive mood, they flash upon that inward eye, which is the bliss of solitude. So he says, for often when on my couch I lie, when I am lying down on my couch, when I am relaxing in vacant, with an empty mind, or in a pensive mood, or when I am thoughtful, they flash upon that inward eye. The memory, the image of these daffodils, it flashes upon that inward eye, subconscious mind. And this is a bliss of solitude. This is a blessing in my loneliness. And then my heart with pleasure fills and dances with the daffodils. And then when I get this image that flashes upon my subconscious mind, my heart is filled with pleasure, and along with the daffodils, as they were moving in the breeze, my heart also dances along with the daffodils. Let us go on to understand the poetic devices that have been used in this poem. Let's begin with the first stanza. In the first stanza, first line, there is a simile. A simile is when two things are compared with the words as and like. So the first line, I wandered lonely as a cloud. So the poet is comparing himself to a cloud using the word as. So he says, I wandered lonely as a cloud. That is a simile. Then the third line, when all at once I saw a crowd, a host of golden daffodils. I saw a crowd. That is a hyperbole where there is exaggeration. Obviously he couldn't have counted them or made an estimation of how many there were. So he says, I saw a crowd. That is a hyperbole. Hyperbole is hyperbole. And then in the second last line, there is alliteration. Beside the lake, beneath the trees. Be, beside, beneath, be. Where you have repetition of the same consonant. That is alliteration. And then in the last line, fluttering and dancing in the breeze, there is personification, because personification is giving lifelike attributes, characteristics to something that is not living. So he says the flowers were dancing and fluttering in the breeze. Fluttering, birds flutter or butterflies flutter. So he is comparing them to birds and butterflies. So there is personification here. In the second stanza, again the first line has a simile where the poet says, continuous as the stars that shine. He is comparing the daffodils with the stars using the word as. So there is simile. Then in the third line, they stretched in never-ending line. Never-ending, this expression shows hyperbole, hyperbole. And then the second last line has hyperbole again, the exaggeration, where he says 10,000 saw I at a glance. And the last line again has personification, where the writer says, tossing their heads in sprightly dance. Like humans, it seemed as if they were tossing their heads and dancing with spirit and vitality. In the third stanza, the first line, the waves beside them dance. There is personification because the waves cannot dance, but they have been given human-like characteristic. This is personification. The second line also is personification. They outdid the sparkling waves in glee, so it seems like a competition where the daffodils outdid the sparkling waves. They were better. They outshone the sparkling waves in happiness. That's about all in third paragraph. Let's go on to the last stanza of the poem, where the last line has alliteration and dances with the daffodils. Dances D, daffodils D, there is alliteration.